welcome, Rosanne. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon to talk about your experiences with DAFNE. So just to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your day-to-day role is, and how DAFNE fits into that?
Thanks, Liesl. Yes, I've been a DAFNE educator since 2010. My role, I'm a diabetes dietitian, and my role is to deliver diabetes education programs for people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So I don't do very much one-to-one clinical work, it's mostly group education. So been running DAFNE since 2010, and always really enjoyed doing the face-to-face contact with the groups, working very closely with my colleagues in the diabetes team, the diabetes nurses, particularly with the DAFNE courses. And we always thought it was very much a privilege to be delivering DAFNE and working so closely with those participants for such a length of time.
Participants on a DAFNE course, they share so much with us, don't they, that we never get a chance to hear about in a fairly short clinic appointment. So you do develop quite a different relationship with people once they're on a DAFNE course. It was one of the things I always loved about being a DAFNE educator. So tell us about your experiences of DAFNE before the dreaded pandemic struck.
So all our courses were face to face. We're quite a rural county, so we always juggled different venues, different localities, and it was sometimes quite a challenge trying to get, you might have one course full, but another course wasn't full enough to run and you had to cancel. So we were always sort of juggling the numbers and trying to encourage people to travel to attend different courses. We used to deliver about 7 courses a year. But so really enjoyed it, used to deliver alongside the diabetes nurses, and always was a really important part of our work.
I think the teamwork approach is a big thing. I used to love delivering with a dietitian to my right, and we made a great team. It was like a tag team approach to DAFNE education. It was great. So for DAFNE graduates, so the people who complete a DAFNE course, we call them DAFNE graduates, don't we? What kind of things do they say to you, or do they share with you once they've done the DAFNE course, the differences of life pre and then after a DAFNE course?
They find DAFNE sort of quite life-changing. They learn so many new skills and experiences, and they get to meet other people with diabetes, which is often the first time that they've experienced that as well.
So March 2020, we went into lockdown. I know we were in the middle of a training course for new DAFNE educators, and they got sent home quite quickly as soon as that message came out. So when the lockdown happened, what were your first thoughts about and your first concerns for the people with type 1 diabetes in your service?
So we had quite long waiting lists and we were booked up until the autumn. So originally we just thought, well, we'll just have to cancel and restart in the autumn. We really didn't envisage it would go on so long, and just couldn't imagine DAFNE being delivered in any other way than the traditional face-to-face approach.
When you heard about remote DAFNE, what did you think and how did you get involved with it?
I was very impressed right from the beginning. DAFNE was so prompt to develop the curriculum, and I think my original thoughts, if I'd have been thinking about it myself, was just how do we deliver in the traditional way, but maybe virtually, not thinking about the whole flipped classroom approach where with the online work that goes alongside the group sessions. And that's what's made it so successful, really, that combination where the
So,
participants still get the benefit of being in a group and the support from the educator, but they're more responsible for their own learning.
and what kind of things do they tell you about that now? So your remote DAFNE graduates, what kind of feedback have you had from them?
They find it more flexible. The online learning is obviously they can do that in their own time. So the actual commitment for the group is less than it used to be previously, and especially there's no travel time and things involved as well. But they often find some of the topics quite challenging with the online work. So they come along to the group session saying, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that, but I know I need to get back over it. But once we've gone through it together during the group, they then feel much more confident with it. So it really helps you to appreciate the benefit of the group session in terms of the contact with the educator as well as the peer support side of things.
I think we've been surprised by some of the feedback. Like you say, we wondered whether they would miss out on that support from other people with diabetes, but certainly the feedback we've had doesn't seem to indicate that. So it's been really quite encouraging, hasn't it? Okay. So how were your colleagues feeling about delivering remotely, and how did you feel about sitting on a conferencing video system to deliver some education?
Yeah, so getting used to the technology has been a real challenge. As I mentioned, I deliver courses all the time, so I had the advantage of being able to deliver some shorter courses, carbohydrate counting and type 2 courses, prior to delivering remote DAFNE. So I'd managed to get confident with the technology with doing shorter courses. My diabetes nurse colleagues who run some DAFNE courses and maybe run fewer than I do are still finding the technology quite challenging when it comes to sharing screens and things like that. Some of the participants have challenges with the technology as well, and that obviously is then a challenge for the educator who doesn't really know how to support them remotely with that. So it does depend very much on the group as well. But we're getting there with more practice and more experience, and the participants are getting more used to the format as well. So we're finding more and more people have used remote platforms previously and are more confident with it.
Yeah, I think as time moves on with these restrictions, this is what many educators are reporting, is that their participants are more used to using this kind of technology with their families and friends. So it's more familiar now than it used to be. So that's been an advantage, I suppose. As far as quality of life goes, what kind of things have your remote DAFNE graduates said are better after DAFNE than they were before? Any specific things that you've had feedback about?
I don't think it's changed from the face-to-face sessions, really. It's the same benefits of feeling more in control, being in charge of the diabetes, not the diabetes in control of them, being able to lead that more flexible life and understanding how to manage their condition much more than they did before.
That's really good to hear. It's good to hear that there are people on the ground telling you, their educator, that this is the improvement that they're seeing. So that's really encouraging. Thank you very much. What would you say to a diabetes specialist nurse or a diabetes dietitian who was considering becoming a DAFNE educator but just felt uncertain or hesitant? What would you say to them?
I would tell them this is a fantastic time to get involved with DAFNE. It's so much more flexible now with the remote options than it was before. So there are advantages in terms of time and costs for delivering programmes. And it's so easy now to observe a course. So I would encourage them to observe another course that's running remotely so that they can just get more experience of it, and then they can have those discussions with their team and their commissioners as to how to proceed. But definitely a really good opportunity to get involved with it now with all the remote training and things for educators.
And can I pick up on that point you said about flexibility? So previously, when DAFNE was run face to face, you mentioned we had to find a location for it. You had to have a dietitian and a diabetes specialist nurse. So how have you adapted remote DAFNE to be more flexible and therefore more accessible to people?
Because we're experienced educators, we're quite confident to deliver the course alone. So it has made it a lot more flexible what dates we can offer. So we ran 13 courses last year, but 5 of those actually ran on Saturdays. So we offer people a choice of mornings and afternoons and Saturdays. So there's a lot more options for them. The number of participants we had come last year was very similar to pre-pandemic numbers, which is really positive. And it's so much easier to fill the courses, whereas before we had to sort of juggle the different numbers on the different venues. Now we can just run a course, and we've been aiming for 5, finding then if you do get one, or you may get one dropout, so then you've still got a good number running. We have had more dropouts than with the face-to-face courses. I think they don't realise how much commitment there is with the online work. So that's more about expectations really, and something we need to address at their pre-course assessment.
I think that's a good point. It's managing people's expectations, isn't it? And I think even though we might share that information with people, sometimes translating that into real life is quite a challenge, isn't it? So if you were talking to somebody about doing a DAFNE course, somebody with type 1 diabetes about doing a DAFNE course, and they thought, I'm not sure it's for me, what would you say to them to encourage them to attend?
I would encourage them to find out what other people have said who have attended a course. There's lots of really good feedback available out there for people that have already attended a course, and find out more about what it entails. Our area, for example, we run shorter carbohydrate counting courses, which are quite a good introduction to DAFNE as well, so they could find out what's available in their area to give them a little bit of a taster. and maybe if they're nervous about the technology, they could investigate how that works as well to set their mind at rest about that. But I would give them that sort of feedback from other participants, how it's really benefited their quality of life, and how people who have maybe had diabetes for 20, 30 years wish they'd have done the course so much sooner.
You were going to give top tips to a DAFNE educator who was going to deliver remotely. If you just had to give 3 top tips on how to be a remote DAFNE educator, what do you think those top tips of yours would be?
I think one is, with any education, it's about being passionate about about the course that you believe in, the DAFNE philosophy, and that sort of non-judgmental and supportive approach. One of the main challenges when you're getting used to remote delivery is that sort of flipped classroom. You're not doing it all for the participants, you're supporting them to learn from their experiences. So I think that's the key message really, is really sort of working with that flipped approach. You don't need to teach them the whole content in your remote sessions. They're more for picking up on any queries and clarifying issues that have come up over the week with the online work.
So thank you very much indeed today for talking to me, Rosanne. It's lovely to hear that you're getting through, goodness knows how many participants doing DAFNE remotely, and that you've been so flexible to enable more and more people to attend. So thank you very much indeed. It's been really good to hear about your experiences.
Thank you.